I hired an actor to pretend to be my boyfriend for a family 4th of July party where my ex-husband was bringing the woman he left me for. But what my fake date did to him left everyone speechless. The moment I realized something inside me had truly broken, not just cracked, but broken for real, was when I apologized to a man I'd known for less than 4 minutes for the traffic on Interstate 35. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me from the passenger seat, the way you look at something you never expected to find. The way you look at a spider sitting in the bathtub, not with disgust, with slow, careful recognition. Like, so that's what this looks like. His name was Ethan. I'd found him 2 days earlier on a website called Hire a Companion and paid him $340 for 4 hours of his time. His profile said he specialized in social situations that required emotional intelligence. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't care. I needed a man who looked like he'd chosen me, and I needed him there by 3 o'clock on the 4th of July. I needed Brandon to see us walk through that gate together. I kept telling myself it wasn't about revenge. I was lying. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 39 years old. I live in a 3-bedroom house in Plano, Texas, with my 2 children. Emma is 8, Lucas is 10. I drive a 2020 Toyota Highlander with a cracked rear taillight. I've been meaning to replace for months. I work as the office manager at a pediatric dental practice on Legacy Drive, which means I spend most of my week fighting with insurance companies and making sure the waiting room smells like bubblegum instead of fear. I was married for 12 years. I say was, like it happened to someone else. Like it was a weather report, like I read about it in the newspaper. Brandon and I met when I was 27 at a friend's backyard barbecue. Not all that different from the one I'm about to tell you about. He was funny, confident, the kind of confident that feels like safety when you're young, but reveals a completely different face years later. We bought a house. We had children. We built a life the way people build anything important. One ordinary day stacked on top of another until suddenly you wake up with something real, something complicated, something you believe belongs to both of you. I thought it belonged to both of us. 3 months before that 4th of July, Brandon stood in our kitchen at exactly 7:20 in the morning. I was packing Lucas's lunch. Emma was watching cartoons in the living room. He stood in the doorway wearing the navy blue shirt I'd ironed the night before and said, "Claire, I need to tell you something." I put the sandwich down. "You're not the woman I married," he said. "You used to take care of yourself. You used to stay fit. You've completely let yourself go. I'm just not attracted to you anymore." I remember the sound of the refrigerator humming. I remember the voices from the cartoon Emma was watching in the next room. And I remember thinking, he's saying this at 7:20 in the morning while our daughter is 10 feet away watching cartoons. I didn't cry. That surprised me. Instead, I asked him one question. Is there someone else? He paused, just long enough for me to know the answer before he spoke. Then he said her name, Vanessa, his executive assistant. 31 years old. Slim in the kind of effortless way that probably wasn't effortless at all. She'd been to our house for a Christmas party 2 years earlier. She'd complimented my smoked brisket, borrowed my lip balm, and left it sitting on the guest bathroom counter. I'd picked it up without giving it a second thought. Within 6 weeks of moving out, Brandon was taking her everywhere. Restaurants, company events, his firm's spring gala, his cousin's wedding, a wedding I wasn't invited to, even though I'd spent over a decade remembering that cousin's birthday every single year. He posted pictures online, not constantly. That almost would have been easier to ignore. He posted them the way people post something they're proud of, a new truck, a promotion, an upgraded life. Then his mother called. Margaret Bennett was 72 years old, sharp as broken glass, and absolutely not the kind of woman who let her family fall apart without saying something. She'd hosted the 4th of July pool party at her home in McKinney for 23 straight years. Same backyard, same oak tree, same family photo. She called me on a Wednesday evening near the end of June. "You're coming," she said. It wasn't a question. "Margaret, he's bringing her." There was a pause, the kind of silence that belongs to a woman carefully choosing every word. "And I still want you there. The kids belong there. You belong there. Don't let him convince you that you've lost your place in this family." I wanted to be brave. I told her I'd think about it. Then I hung up, sat in my driveway, and stayed there for almost 45 minutes. I kept picturing Brandon with his hand around Vanessa's waist, her white swimsuit, those smiling photos online. I kept hearing him say, "You've let yourself go." While I was packing our son's lunch, I thought about 12 years of dinners I'd cooked, permission slips I'd signed, fevers I'd handled in the middle of the night while he slept because he had an early meeting. Then I opened my laptop. I typed, "Hire an actor for a family event." 3 seconds later, hireacompanion.com. Ethan's profile picture showed a man in his mid-30s standing outside what looked like a small theater. His arms folded, not smiling, not in an unfriendly way. More like, "I don't need to perform for a headshot." His reviews were oddly specific. Ethan stayed professional during one of the most awkward family dinners imaginable. He knew exactly when to speak and exactly when to stay quiet. Worth every dollar. One review simply said, "He understood what was happening before I even explained it." That was the one that convinced me. I sent him a message. I explained everything, more honestly than I'd expected. I told him about Brandon, about that morning in the kitchen, about Vanessa, about Margaret's 4th of July party, about the oak tree, about the 23-year family tradition I was terrified of losing. I told him my children would be there, and that he absolutely had to be kind to them. That part wasn't negotiable. I asked if he was available for 4 hours on the 4th of July for a pool party in McKinney. He replied 20 minutes later, "I am. Here's my rate. Call me tomorrow and we'll go over everything." We talked for almost half an hour. He asked questions I hadn't expected. Not logistical questions. Real ones. How long have you been divorced? What do your children know? Is Brandon the kind of man who becomes aggressive or just cruel? Have you seen him with the other woman yet, or will this be the first time? I answered every question honestly, and when I told him about the conversation in the kitchen, there was a pause. Then he quietly said, "I understand what I'm walking into." 2 days later, he knocked on my front door at exactly 2:45 that afternoon. He was tall, dark hair, a white linen shirt with the sleeves casually rolled to his elbows. He carried himself with the kind of relaxed confidence that comes from someone who's been comfortable in his own skin for a very long time. He looked like a man who belonged anywhere, which was exactly what I needed. I was standing on the porch wearing my navy blue summer dress. I'd owned it for nearly 4 years. Every spring, I'd tell myself I should replace it. I never did. The very first words out of my mouth were, "I'm sorry. I don't really look like my pictures anymore." He stopped, looked at me, then said, "You apologized before you even introduced yourself." The embarrassment hit me instantly. "I'm sorry. I'm Claire." Something shifted in his expression after that second apology. Not pity, something quieter than pity, something more thoughtful. But all he did was extend his hand, "Ethan." We loaded the kids into the SUV. Emma immediately started asking him questions about acting. "Have you ever played a superhero? A villain? A pirate? A pirate?" Ethan answered seriously. Lucas frowned. "Pirates don't go to dental conventions." "This one had a very unhealthy relationship with sugar," Ethan replied. The whole car burst into laughter. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel as the freeway exit came into view. The closer we got, the harder it became to breathe. I apologized for the traffic. Ethan didn't answer. He simply kept looking out the windshield. A minute later, I apologized because the air conditioner was making a clicking noise. Still nothing. Then Emma pressed both hands against his window, leaving 2 perfect handprints on the glass. I reached over automatically. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." "It's a window, Claire." His voice stayed calm. I slowly lowered my hand. My face felt hot. Brandon's black pickup truck was already sitting in the driveway when we arrived. Parked beside it was a white Mercedes convertible I'd never seen before. I didn't have to ask whose it was. My stomach dropped straight through the seat. Ethan looked at me. "Ready?" I wasn't. Not even close. But I nodded anyway. We walked through the gate together. His hand rested lightly against the small of my back. Emma ran ahead toward the pool. Lucas stayed beside us. He always did when he sensed something was wrong. Margaret's backyard looked exactly the way it had every 4th of July for more than 2 decades. The pool shimmered in the afternoon sun. Red, white, and blue decorations hung everywhere. The smell of barbecue and charcoal filled the air. The same neighbors, the same cousins. Brandon's brother Eric, his wife Melissa. She hugged me so tightly I could almost feel the apology in it. And then I saw Brandon, standing beside the grill, one arm wrapped around Vanessa's waist, like she was part of the display. She wore a bright white swimsuit, perfect hair. She laughed at something he just said. Beautiful in the kind of polished way that probably felt like proof to him. "Look what I upgraded to." He noticed Ethan before he noticed me. Then his eyes found me. I watched his expression change 3 separate times in less than 2 seconds. First, the automatic irritation he'd worn ever since I filed for divorce. Then, confusion. Or maybe calculation. And finally, when his eyes settled on Ethan, alarm. He started walking toward us. Vanessa followed beside him with effortless confidence. Well, he called loudly enough that several conversations stopped. This is interesting. He stopped a few feet away, looked Ethan up and down, the way one man sizes up another while deciding whether he should feel threatened. So, he said, "Who's this?" Ethan. His voice remained perfectly calm, not defensive, not aggressive, just conversational. "Claire's boyfriend." Brandon laughed. Not because anything was funny, the kind of laugh people use as a weapon. "Oh, come on, Claire." He looked directly at me, with the exact expression I'd come to know during the last 2 years of our marriage. The one that said, "We both know the truth, don't we? You seriously expect everyone to believe you didn't pay this guy to show up?" Every conversation on that patio stopped. I could feel every pair of eyes settle on me, on my dress, on my body, on the face of a woman wearing an old summer dress, on the body that had carried 2 children, on the woman who apologized before she even spoke. My fingers slipped out of Ethan's hand. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I wasn't even sure who I was apologizing to anymore, or why. It happened automatically, like breathing. Ethan reached for my hand again. His grip was steady, certain. "Don't be," Brandon smirked. "So tell me, does the boyfriend package include hand-holding, or is that an extra charge?" The backyard fell silent in that strange way parties sometimes do, the kind of silence that tells you everyone knows something real is happening, but nobody wants to be the first person to move. Ethan looked at Brandon, not angrily. He wasn't performing. He simply looked at him the way someone looks at a person desperately trying to seem much bigger than he really is. Then he asked, "Does the ex-husband package include humiliating the mother of your children in front of those children?" He let the question hang for a heartbeat. "Or do you do that part for free?" Someone gasped. I think it was Melissa. Brandon's smile disappeared. For the first time that afternoon, he had no comeback. Life slowly resumed around us. Music started feeling audible again. Someone flipped burgers on the grill. Children jumped into the pool as if nothing had happened. Brandon tried to recover, or at least pretend he had. He retreated toward the grill, started talking louder than necessary, kept placing his arm around Vanessa, almost like he needed everyone to keep looking. "Look what I have. Look what I chose. I did what I always did at family gatherings. I made myself useful. I carried serving trays out from the kitchen. Sorry. Excuse me. Coming through. I wiped down the patio table after the children finished eating. Sorry. Let me get that." When Brandon's Aunt Diane needed another drink, I was already pouring it before she even asked. When someone knocked over a cup of lemonade, I had napkins in my hand before anyone else reacted. Ethan watched me. He never interrupted. He answered Emma's endless questions about whether the pirate from the dental convention was still his greatest acting role. He chatted comfortably with Margaret, who seemed to like him almost immediately. He helped Lucas find the towel that had slipped behind one of the lounge chairs. But every few minutes, he watched me. Emma accidentally squeezed ketchup onto the ground near Ethan's shoe. I rushed over immediately. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry." I knelt down with a napkin. "It's ketchup, Claire." "I know, but it's ketchup." His voice stayed gentle, patient, the voice of someone simply stating a fact he wanted me to actually hear. "It'll wipe right off." My hands were still shaking while I cleaned it. He noticed that too. The family photo had always been Margaret's favorite tradition. She protected it almost like a sacred ritual. Every 4th of July. Same oak tree, same camera angle, same arrangement. 23 years of photographs lined the hallway inside her house. Children growing taller, adults growing older, some faces disappearing over the years, some new ones joining. I'd been in every single photo for 16 years. Vanessa quietly moved beside Brandon while Margaret organized everyone. Natural, confident, like she'd already decided exactly where she belonged. Margaret pointed toward the chair in the very center beneath the oak tree. "Claire, sweetheart, sit here." I instinctively stepped backward. "Oh, no. No, someone else should. I don't want to ruin the picture. I really shouldn't." "I'm sorry." The legs of a metal chair scraped loudly across the patio. Everyone turned. Ethan had pulled the chair directly toward me. His voice remained calm, but it carried across the entire backyard. "Why?" he asked quietly. Is everyone else's comfort automatically more important than yours? I've been watching you all afternoon, he said. Every single time something happened. The traffic. Your children behaving like children. Your ex-husband making fun of you in front of his entire family. You assumed it was your fault. And before anyone could say a word, you apologized. I felt my throat tighten. People don't learn to apologize before they even speak, he continued. Someone teaches them that. They learn that taking up space is something they need permission for. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Brandon shift his weight. The kind of movement a person makes when they're suddenly aware the ground beneath them isn't as solid as they thought. She wasn't like that when we first met, he muttered. Ethan turned toward him. No. Just one word, nothing more. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Every person standing in that backyard seemed to arrive at exactly the same realization at exactly the same time. She wasn't like that when we first met. So, what happened in between? Brandon's son, Tyler, 12 years old, the boy I'd helped raise for almost 10 years, turned slowly toward his father. The expression on his face was one no 12-year-old should ever have to wear. But some children develop it anyway. The expression of a child who's been quietly collecting little memories for years and suddenly understands what all of them mean. Brandon ordering for me at restaurants. She'll have the salad. She's watching her figure. He always said it with a smile, as though it were a compliment. Brandon sitting across from me at dinner while I served everyone else. You know. Vanessa's been doing intermittent fasting. She's already lost 18 pounds. Then he'd look at me, say nothing else. He didn't have to. Tyler remembered all of it. I could actually see it happening behind his eyes. Memory after memory lining up, one after another. Then Vanessa moved. She didn't make a scene. She didn't yell. She simply reached up and gently removed Brandon's hand from around her waist. He frowned. What are you doing? She didn't answer him. Instead, she looked at me. Not triumphantly, not smugly, not the way I'd imagined she would ever look at me. She looked frightened, like someone who had just recognized something terrifying. She looked at me the way people look at someone, when they suddenly realize they're looking at their own future. Do I apologize like that? Her voice was quiet. The question wasn't really directed at me. It wasn't even directed at anyone in particular. It was the kind of question people ask when they no longer know who they're asking. Do I really do it that much? Brandon's face lost what little color it had left. He never answered. He didn't need to. His silence answered for him. Vanessa picked up her purse from the deck chair beside the pool, walked calmly toward the side gate. Purposeful. Certain. Brandon called after her. Once. Then again. His voice climbed slightly higher the second time. The unmistakable sound of a man encountering consequences he never believed would actually arrive. She didn't look back. She wasn't running dramatically. She simply walked faster. The gate swung shut behind her, and Brandon stood there beside his mother's grill, wearing swim trunks, holding a spatula, surrounded by his family. For the first time in the 12 years I'd known him, he had absolutely no idea what to do next. I sat in the chair beneath the oak tree for the family picture. Margaret rested one hand gently on my shoulder before Emma's cousin pressed the shutter. Nobody asked Brandon to move. Nobody rearranged the picture to make him comfortable. He simply remained at the very edge of the frame. After the picture, people slowly drifted back toward the food and the pool. No one said much, not because there wasn't anything to say, because everyone was replaying the last 20 minutes in their own mind. Margaret disappeared into the house and returned carrying a cardboard storage box. It was old. The corners were worn soft with age. She walked straight past Brandon, straight past everyone else, and stopped in front of me. I've been meaning to give these to you. I looked down. Inside the box were photo albums, school drawings, Christmas ornaments with Emma's and Lucas's names written in glitter, a Mother's Day card Emma had made when she was 5, a tiny handprint in blue paint. I kept them here because I thought... Margaret paused. I thought one day we'd all be together again. She smiled sadly. I don't think that's happening anymore. She placed the box into my arms. So they belong with you. Brandon finally found his voice. Mom. She turned toward him. No. Just one word. Firm. Final. You don't get to interrupt me this time. He stared at her in disbelief. She had defended him his entire life, made excuses for him, smoothed over arguments, explained away his behavior. Not today. I watched you criticize her for years. Margaret's voice never rose. Somehow that made it even harder to listen to. I told myself married people have rough seasons. I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself you'd figure it out. She looked directly at him. I was wrong. You didn't destroy your marriage in one day. You did it one comment at a time, one comparison, one insult, one joke disguised as honesty, one apology you trained her to make after another. No one moved. Even the children had stopped splashing in the pool. You convinced a woman who raised your children that existing was something she needed to apologize for. Brandon opened his mouth, closed it again. There simply wasn't a defense for that. Margaret stepped closer to me. I'm sorry. I blinked. She shook her head. I should have said something years ago. Those words hit harder than anything Brandon had said all afternoon, because they were real, not dramatic, not rehearsed, just true. Ethan quietly took the box from my hands before it became too heavy. I've got it. I looked at him. You don't have to. I know, he smiled, but you also don't have to carry everything by yourself anymore. For some reason, that was the sentence that finally broke me, not Brandon's insults, not Vanessa leaving, not Margaret standing up to her son. I started crying, not loudly, not uncontrollably, just the quiet kind of crying that comes after holding your breath for years. Emma ran over first. Mom, I knelt and wrapped my arms around both of my children. I'm okay. For the first time in a very long time, I realized I actually meant it. The barbecue ended just after sunset. Fireworks had already started popping somewhere across the neighborhood. Emma fell asleep before we even left McKinney. Lucas lasted another 10 minutes. By the time we reached Plano, both of them were asleep in the back seat. Ethan carried Emma inside without waking her. I tucked a blanket around Lucas after he climbed into bed, half asleep. When I came back downstairs, Ethan was standing in the kitchen. His car service had already arrived. The headlights were visible through the front window. So, I said, I guess this is where I pay you. He smiled. I think you already did. I laughed softly. No, I mean literally. I reached into my purse and handed him the envelope we'd agreed on. He looked at it for a second before slipping it into his jacket pocket. Then he reached into his own pocket, pulled out a business card. There was nothing printed on the front except his name. On the back, written in black ink, was the name of a therapist. I don't get a commission, he said before I could ask. My sister's a psychologist. She works with emotional abuse survivors. I think she'd understand you. I stared at the card. I wasn't abused. He didn't argue. He simply nodded. Okay. That was all. No lecture. No attempt to convince me. He walked to the front door, then paused with his hand on the knob. Claire, I looked up. One day, you'll stop apologizing before you speak. And when that day comes, I hope you notice. Then he left. 3 weeks later, I called the number on the back of that card. Not because I suddenly believed Ethan, because I couldn't stop hearing what he'd said beneath the oak tree. Someone taught you this. My therapist's name was Dr. Rachel Kim. During our first session, she asked me a question that sounded almost ridiculous. How often do you say I'm sorry during an average day? I don't know. Count. I started keeping track. The first day, 47 times. 47. I apologized when someone bumped into me at the grocery store. I apologized to the cashier because my credit card took an extra second to process. I apologized to my own children for asking them to brush their teeth. By the end of the week, I had stopped being surprised by the number. Dr. Kim wasn't. She simply asked, what happens if you replace I'm sorry with thank you? Instead of, I'm sorry for being late, I tried. Thank you for waiting. Instead of, I'm sorry for bothering you, I said, thank you for taking a minute to help. It felt unnatural, almost dishonest, like wearing someone else's clothes. But little by little, it became easier. Brandon called 6 weeks after the 4th of July. I almost didn't answer. Claire. His voice sounded different, smaller. I wanted to apologize. I leaned against the kitchen counter. For what? Silence. Long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. For everything. I didn't realize. He stopped, then corrected himself. No, I realized. I just didn't care. That answer surprised me, not because it fixed anything, because it was honest. I'm in therapy. I know that's probably meaningless to you. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't. He laughed quietly. I figured I just wanted you to know. I thanked him. Nothing more. When I hung up, I realized something strange. I hadn't spent the entire conversation trying to make him feel better. I hadn't apologized once. Not a single time. Margaret still hosts the 4th of July party every year. The family photo is still taken beneath the same oak tree. The tradition survived, just not in the way any of us expected. Brandon still comes. sometimes alone, sometimes not. I don't organize my life around whether he'll be there anymore. Emma is old enough now to tease me whenever I start apologizing unnecessarily. She'll grin and say, "Mom, that's not one of yours." Lucas usually laughs, then adds, "You almost did it again." They're helping me notice. Sometimes I still slip. Healing isn't a straight line. But now, when I hear myself beginning to say, "I'm sore," I stop, take a breath, and start the sentence over. Because I finally understand something that took me almost 40 years to learn. Taking up space is not something you have to earn. Love is not something you have to apologize for. And the people who truly care about you will never ask you to shrink just to make themselves feel bigger.